December 1999. Charles Schulz sat alone in his quiet California studio when the phone rang.
Minutes later, he whispered two words that ended half a century of work.
It's over.
His hands trembled, his vision blurred, and the cancer that had crept into his body had taken from him the only thing he'd ever truly lived for: drawing. When asked if Peanuts should continue without him, Schulz didn't hesitate. When I'm done, it's done. And with that, the world's most beloved comic strip ended not with applause, but with silence. The sound of one man saying goodbye to his life's only companion. Charles Monroe Schulz was born on the 26th of November, 1922 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A quiet, gray world that seemed to match the stillness of his early years. His father, Carl, was a gentle barber. His mother, Dina, was kind but frail, often confined to bed. They struggled through the Great Depression, counting every dollar, moving between small apartments, holding on to dignity when hope was scarce. Charles grew up as their only child, watching that quiet struggle and learning early that silence could be a kind of strength. While other boys played in the snow, he sat alone, sketching his world with pencils his mother could barely afford. His dog, Spike, became his only friend, loyal, funny, and full of personality. When Spike died, 10-year-old Charles buried him himself. That loss never left him. Years later, he brought Spike back to life as Snoopy the Dreamer, who never truly leaves, even when his master feels alone. At school, he was shy, awkward, and younger than his classmates. He skipped grades for being bright, but never felt he belonged. He spent recess sitting alone, drawing in the dirt. Charlie Brown's uncertain smile, that fragile hope before every disappointment, came straight from those moments when he sold his first drawing to Ripley's, Believe It or Not, at 14. He thought his classmates would be proud. Instead, they ignored him. That quiet sting of success that feels like loneliness became part of every Peanuts panel he'd ever draw. Then came war. In 1943, his mother lay dying of cervical cancer. 3 days before he shipped out with the U.S. Army, she passed away. He never got to say goodbye. Her loss carved a space in his heart that no fame could ever fill. He served as a staff sergeant, leading a .50 caliber machine gun squad across Europe. He hated violence but followed orders. Once he forgot to load his weapon, the enemy soldier surrendered anyway. It was the only time he ever fired a gun. In April 1945, Schulz arrived at the Dachau concentration camp just after its liberation. The horror he saw there haunted him for the rest of his life. Later, he said every Peanut strip carried a piece of that memory, the quiet grief behind the laughter. When he returned home in 1945, the boy who loved to draw was gone. In his place stood a man trying to make sense of pain. He took a job grading art lessons at the art instruction schools in Minneapolis, earning little but finding solace in the sound of pencil on paper. There he began creating little characters, children who spoke with the honesty adults had lost. He called the strip Le Folks. Readers loved it, but the editors didn't. When they canneled it, he gathered his drawings and sent them to United Feature Syndicate. They loved his work, but changed the name without asking. Peanuts, they called it, a title Schulz hated. It makes it sound small, he complained, like it doesn't matter. Still, on the 2nd of October 1950, Peanuts debuted in 7 newspapers. He earned $90 that month and began one of the most enduring stories in history. The first strip was just 4 panels. Charlie Brown walks by and a child says, "Good old Charlie Brown." Then another adds, "I hate him." Sad, simple, true, everything Peanuts would ever be. 2 days later, Snoopy appeared. At first, just a dog. But over time, he became Schulz's alter ego. The dreamer inside the man who never quite fit in. By the late 1950 seconds, Peanuts exploded into a phenomenon. From 7 newspapers to thousands, from quiet sketches to lunchboxes, calendars, and Sunday morning joy, Charlie Brown became the face of lovable failure. Snoopy became the world's imagination on 4 paws. Schulz, the quiet barber's son, became a household name. Yet fame only deepened his isolation. He worked 6 days a week alone in his studio, refusing to let anyone else draw a single line. "No one can draw my feelings," he said. The discipline made him legendary, but it also made him lonely. His wife Joyce later said she felt like a widow with a husband still alive. Beneath Peanuts' warmth lay its creator's melancholy. Charlie Brown's heartbreak came from a real one, Donna Johnson, the red-haired woman he loved and lost before fame. She said no to his proposal, married another man, and Schulz never recovered. For the rest of his life, he drew her into the strip as the little red-haired girl, the love Charlie Brown could never reach. Then came A Charlie Brown Christmas in 1965, the special no one believed would work. Too quiet, too honest, too simple, they said. Yet half the nation tuned in, and it became an instant classic. Schulz won an Emmy, a Peabody, and eternal love from fans. But even success couldn't cure his sadness. Happiness is a warm puppy, he wrote. But sadness is knowing how brief that warmth can be. By the 1,970 seconds, Peanuts was in more than 1,000 papers, earning millions. But Schulz was exhausted. He had drawn nearly 18,000 strips by hand. His hand trembled from an essential tremor, forcing him to hold his wrist to steady the pen. The studio wanted to prepare for his death. Without telling him, they hired another artist to draw backups. When he found out, he was furious. If anyone else draws Peanuts, he said, it's not Peanuts. He renegotiated his contract to ensure that no one would ever continue it after him. That single decision preserved the purity of his art and the sanctity of his solitude. In the 1,980 seconds and 90 seconds, lawsuits, health scares, and exhaustion followed him. After heart surgery and declining strength, he fought to keep drawing. Every line, every word balloon was a battle, but he refused to quit until his body gave him no choice. In late 1999, doctors found advanced colon cancer. Surgery damaged his eyesight. His hands could no longer obey him. The man who'd never missed a day of work in 50 years finally had to stop. When the syndicate asked if he'd let others continue Peanuts, he paused, then whispered, I'm done. On the 14th of December 1999, he publicly announced his retirement. During an interview, tears filled his eyes as he said, I never dreamed this is how it would end, but it's been taken away from me. 2 months later, on the 12th of February 2000, Charles Schulz passed away in his sleep the night before his final Sunday strip was printed. In it, Snoopy sat at his typewriter, writing, Dear friends, thank you for your support. It was his goodbye drawn by a trembling hand and printed the morning after his death. Charles Schulz spent 50 years turning loneliness into laughter, heartbreak into hope, and sorrow into something beautiful. He never missed a single day until his body forced him to stop. And when he finally let go, the world cried with him. Even now, Peanuts endures because it wasn't just about Charlie Brown or Snoopy. It was about all of us trying, failing, and finding grace in the quiet moments between. So, tell me, when you think of Peanuts, what do you remember most?